The morning of November the 9th, 2016, began like any other autumn day in America, but something extraordinary was unfolding across social media platforms, newsrooms, and water cooler conversations worldwide. Donald Trump had just been elected the 45th President of the United States, defying pollsters, pundits, and political establishment wisdom. Yet in the midst of this seismic political earthquake, millions of people weren't talking about electoral maps or campaign strategies. They were talking about a cartoon. 16 years earlier, on March 19, 2000, an episode of The Simpsons titled Bart to the Future had aired on the Fox network. In this episode, a Native American oracle at a casino gives young Bart Simpson a vision of his future. The vision reveals that Bart has grown into an unemployed musician, living with Ralph Wiggum, while his sister Lisa has achieved something remarkable. She has become the first female president of the United States. During a cabinet meeting in the Oval Office, President Lisa Simpson delivers a line that would echo through time. "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." Dan Greaney, the writer who penned that episode, sat in his Los Angeles home watching the election results unfold. His phone had been buzzing incessantly for months as Trump's campaign gained momentum. But now it wouldn't stop. Journalists, friends, former colleagues, strangers on the internet, everyone wanted to know the same thing. How had he known? How had a cartoon sitcom predicted what seemed impossible? It was a warning to America, Greaney told The Hollywood Reporter in an interview that would be cited thousands of times in the years to come. And that just seemed like the logical last stop before hitting bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going insane. Greaney explained that the writer's room had needed Lisa to inherit problems beyond her fixing, a scenario where everything had gone as badly as it possibly could. Trump, who had been flirting with presidential ambitions even in 2000 through an exploratory committee for a Reform Party candidacy, represented the ultimate absurdist endpoint of American celebrity culture. The Simpsons had always embraced the over-the-top side of American life, and Trump was simply the fulfillment of that satirical tradition. But the Trump prediction was merely the most famous example of a phenomenon that had been building for decades. Somewhere along the line, The Simpsons had transformed from a beloved animated sitcom into something that resembled a prophetic text for the digital age. And they weren't alone. Their competitor, Seth MacFarlane's Family Guy, had been accumulating its own eerie track record of apparent precognition. The story of animated predictions begins long before either show existed, rooted in a fundamental truth about satire itself. Great satirists don't merely mock the present, they extrapolate from current trends to their logical conclusions. When Jonathan Swift proposed eating Irish babies to solve famine, he wasn't predicting the future, he was illuminating the callousness of the present. When The Simpsons and Family Guy make jokes about technology, politics, celebrities and culture, they tap into the same tradition. Sometimes reality simply catches up to satire. Al Jean, the longtime executive producer of The Simpsons, has spent years fielding questions about the show's predictive abilities. His standard response has become something of a mantra among the show's creative team. If you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes. With over 790 episodes spanning more than 3 decades, The Simpsons has generated an almost incomprehensible volume of jokes, observations, and scenarios. Statistically, some of them were bound to align with future events, but statistics alone cannot explain the precision of certain predictions, nor the emotional impact they have on audiences when they come true. The story of The Simpsons and Family Guy predictions is ultimately a story about the strange relationship between fiction and reality, between comedy and prophecy, between the absurd scenarios writers imagine and the even more absurd world that eventually manifests. The year was 1993, and Springfield had just legalized gambling. In the Season 5 episode titled Dollar Pringfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, the town's residents embraced their new casino with characteristic excess. Among the attractions was a magic show featuring Gunther and Ernst, a flamboyant German duo who performed with their beloved white tiger, Anastasia. The parody was unmistakable. Siegfried Fischbacher and Roy Horn had been Las Vegas royalty for decades. dazzling audiences at the Mirage with their elaborate illusions featuring rare white tigers and lions. Their shows were monuments to spectacle, combining magic, dance, and the primal thrill of watching humans interact with apex predators. To satirize them was natural for any comedy show commenting on American entertainment culture. But the Simpsons episode didn't merely mock the act. In a dream sequence, Anastasia the tiger reflects on her capture from the wild and her life of captivity performing tricks for human entertainment. The scene culminates with Anastasia attacking Gunter and Ernst during their performance, turning on the masters who had domesticated her. 10 years later, on October 3, 2003, reality collided with fiction at the Mirage Hotel and Casino. During a live performance celebrating Roy Horn's 59th birthday, a 7-year-old white Bengal tiger named Montecore bit Horn on the neck and dragged him off stage. The attack left Horn critically injured, partially paralyzed, and ended the legendary duo's performing career. When journalists and fans drew connections to the Simpsons episode, the show's production team was characteristically modest. They dismissed the novelty of the prediction by noting that, given the inherent dangers of performing with large predators, such an attack was bound to happen sooner or later. The joke had been rooted in the obvious tension of the act itself. Humans controlling wild animals through force and conditioning, an arrangement that could catastrophically fail at any moment. Yet, the specificity of the parallel remained striking. The Simpsons hadn't merely predicted that a tiger might attack someone, somewhere. They had created a direct parody of Siegfried and Roy, depicted their tiger attacking them during a show, and broadcast this scenario a full decade before it occurred in real life. The production team's explanation was logical, but it couldn't entirely dispel the uncanny feeling that Springfield's writers had somehow glimpsed the future. The dawn of the new millennium brought with it anxieties about technology, surveillance, and the erosion of privacy. These concerns would prove prophetic in ways that few imagined, and The Simpsons would be there to document them before they fully materialized. In a brief shot from Season 8, Episode 9, which aired in the late 1990s, the camera pans beneath the floorboards of the Simpson family home. Hidden among the infrastructure are surveillance wires, labeled with the acronyms of America's intelligence agencies, FBI, CIA, and NSA. It was a quick visual gag, easily missed, suggesting that even ordinary families might be under government surveillance. But the show would return to this theme with far greater prominence in The Simpsons movie, released in theaters on July 27, 2007. In the film, the Simpson family becomes fugitives after Homer's negligence leads to Springfield being enclosed in a massive dome by the Environmental Protection Agency. While hiding and discussing their situation, Marge dismisses Lisa's concerns about being overheard. "It's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation," Marge assures her daughter. The scene immediately cuts to the headquarters of the National Security Agency, where rows upon rows of government employees sit at monitoring stations, headphones clamped to their ears, listening to private conversations across America. One agent leaps to his feet, celebrating. After years of surveillance, they've finally found something incriminating. The Simpson family is captured shortly thereafter. 6 years later, in June 2013, a young NSA contractor named Edward Snowden would flee to Hong Kong, carrying thousands of classified documents. His revelations, published in The Guardian and The Washington Post, exposed the true extent of NSA surveillance programs. The agency had been collecting phone records of millions of Americans, tapping into the servers of major technology companies, and conducting mass surveillance on a scale that shocked even privacy advocates who had suspected government overreach. The Simpsons hadn't invented the concept of government surveillance. Concerns about intelligence agencies monitoring citizens predated the show by decades, but the specificity of the movie's depiction, particularly the image of an NSA monitoring room filled with agents listening to ordinary conversations, proved unnervingly accurate. Some reports emerged claiming that Edward Snowden himself had commented on the parallel, though the show's writers maintained they had simply been engaging in the time-honored tradition of satirizing power structures and their inevitable abuses. The surveillance prediction joined a growing list of technological prophecies that The Simpsons had apparently achieved. And perhaps no prediction in this category was more personally relatable than the show's vision of wearable communication technology. March 19, 1995. The episode Lisa's Wedding transported viewers 15 years into the future, to the year 2010. Lisa Simpson, now a young woman attending a prestigious university in England, falls in love with a charming Englishman named Hugh Parkfield, voiced by actor Mandy Patinkin. When Hugh's first marriage proposal goes awry, he immediately bends down and speaks into a strange device, wrapped around his wrist, a hybrid of flip phone and wristwatch that functions as a communication device. The scene was played for futuristic novelty, a vision of technology that seemed both plausible and distant. In 1995, the most advanced watch technology available to consumers was the Casio calculator watch, a clunky device that could perform basic arithmetic. The idea of speaking into your wrist to make phone calls belonged firmly in the realm of science fiction, evoking images of Dick Tracy's famous two-way wrist radio from comic strips decades earlier. But the show's writers had understood something fundamental about the trajectory of technology. Moore's law suggested that computing power would continue to increase while devices shrank in size. Mobile phones were already getting smaller and more powerful. The logical endpoint was a device small enough to wear on the body, while sophisticated enough to enable real communication. On April 24, 2015, Apple released the first generation of the Apple Watch. The device could make phone calls, send messages, track health metrics, and connect to the internet, all from a sleek package strapped to the user's wrist. Within years, smartwatches would become ubiquitous, transforming how people interacted with technology and each other. The same episode, Lisa's Wedding, featured another technological prediction that would prove equally prescient. When Lisa calls her mother to share news of her engagement, she uses what the show called a picture phone, a device with a rotary dial and a thick screen that displays the face of the person on the other end of the call. The design was clunky by modern standards, a product of 1995 imagination filtered through existing technology. But the core concept, face-to-face video communication as a casual, everyday occurrence, perfectly anticipated the rise of FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, and countless other video calling platforms that would become central to personal and professional life in the 2020s. Apple's FaceTime launched in 2010, the very year depicted in the episode. The timing was almost too perfect, leading some fans to joke that the Simpsons writers must be time travelers rather than mere satirists. While The Simpsons was building its reputation for technological and political prophecy, another animated series was quietly accumulating its own track record of eerie predictions. Family Guy, created by Seth MacFarlane and premiering on Fox in 1919, took a different approach to comedy than its predecessor. Where The Simpsons favoured social satire and clever wordplay, Family Guy embraced absurdist non-sequiturs, celebrity parodies, and cutaway gags that could reference anything from politics to pop culture to the deeply inappropriate. This structure would prove surprisingly conducive to apparent prediction. Family Guy's cutaway format allowed the show to comment on hundreds of topics per episode, dramatically increasing the statistical likelihood of some jokes aligning with future events. But certain predictions transcended probability and entered the realm of the genuinely unsettling. The year 2005 brought Season 4 of Family Guy and an episode titled Don't Make Me Over. The central plot followed Meg Griffin as she underwent a makeover and briefly became a successful singer, but it was a throwaway cutaway gag that would later achieve infamy. In the scene, baby Stewie Griffin is seen running naked through a shopping mall, screaming for help. "Help! I've escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement," he shouts, accepting money from talking dog Brian for completing the dare. In 2005, Kevin Spacey was one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. He had won 2 Academy Awards for The Usual Suspects in 1996 and American Beauty in 2000. His reputation was impeccable, his talent undeniable. The jokes seemed like random celebrity targeting, the kind of edgy humour that Family Guy specialised in. 12 years later, in October 2017, actor Anthony Rapp came forward with allegations that Spacey had made sexual advances toward him in 1986. when Rapp was only 14 years old. Spacey responded with a controversial statement that attempted to apologize while simultaneously coming out as gay, a move widely criticized as deflection. Within days, more accusers emerged. 8 people who had worked with Spacey on the Netflix series House of Cards alleged harassment or assault. The actor's career collapsed almost overnight. The Family Guy joke, suddenly and horrifyingly, no longer seemed random. The show had depicted Spacey imprisoning a child in his basement, imagery that now resonated with allegations of predatory behavior toward minors. Fans and journalists began asking how the writers had known, or if they had known something that wasn't yet public. The most plausible explanation was that Spacey's behavior had been an open secret within Hollywood circles for years before the allegations became public. Family Guy's writers, deeply embedded in the entertainment industry, may have heard rumors and incorporated them into a joke that seemed outlandish to general audiences, but hinted at darker truths known to insiders. The show hadn't predicted the future, so much as it had documented a present that most people couldn't see. This pattern of Family Guy jokes exposing industry secrets before they became scandals repeated itself with other celebrities. A 2009 episode featured a cutaway where Stewie expresses disbelief that Brody Jenner was born to someone like Bruce Jenner, whom Stewie describes as an elegant, beautiful Dutch woman. A 2011 episode depicted Bruce Jenner dancing flamboyantly for men in the Navy. At the time, Bruce Jenner was known as an Olympic gold medalist and reality television personality, the patriarch of the Kardashian-Jenner family. The jokes about Jenner's gender presentation seemed like random absurdist humor, the kind of celebrity mockery that Family Guy trafficked in constantly. In April 2015, Bruce Jenner publicly came out as a transgender woman in a widely watched interview with Diane Sawyer. She would subsequently transition and take the name Caitlyn Jenner. The Family Guy jokes from years earlier suddenly appeared prescient, though once again, the more likely explanation was that Jenner's gender identity had been the subject of industry speculation and whispers long before her public announcement. Not all animated predictions involved gradual reveals of industry secrets. Sometimes, the collision between fiction and reality was sudden, violent, and tragic. On March 17, 2013, Family Guy aired an episode titled Turban Cowboy. The plot followed Peter Griffin as he befriended a Muslim man named Mahmood after a skydiving accident. The friendship sours when Peter discovers that Mahmood is actually a terrorist planning to bomb a bridge in Quahog. In one of the episode's signature cutaway gags, Peter is shown winning the Boston Marathon by driving his car through the crowd of runners, mowing them down as he crosses the finish line. It was dark humor, the kind that Family Guy had built its reputation on. The joke connected to nothing else in the episode. It existed solely as an absurdist non sequitur, illustrating Peter's stupidity and moral blindness. Exactly 1 month later, on April 15, 2013, 2 homemade pressure cooker bombs exploded near the finish line of the Boston Marathon. 3 people were killed, including an 8-year-old boy. Over 260 others were injured, many suffering devastating wounds that required amputations. The attack, carried out by brothers Joka and Tamerlan Tsarnaev, became one of the most traumatic terrorist events in American history since September 11, 2001. Within hours, someone created an edited video that spliced together 2 separate scenes from Turban Cowboy, Peter's Boston Marathon gag, and a later scene where Peter inadvertently detonates bombs using his cell phone. The manipulated clip made it appear that Family Guy had depicted a bombing at the Boston Marathon, rather than merely a car attack. The video spread rapidly across social media, promoted by conspiracy theorists including radio host Alex Jones, who cited it as evidence of a false flag operation. Seth MacFarlane, the show's creator, responded swiftly and unequivocally. "The edited Family Guy clip currently circulating is abhorrent," he wrote on Twitter. "The event was a crime and a tragedy, and my thoughts are with the victims." Fox immediately pulled Turban Cowboy from its streaming platforms and announced that the episode would not air in future reruns. YouTube removed the manipulated clips for violating policies against deceptive content. The incident represented a dark intersection of animated comedy, real-world tragedy, and the viral spread of misinformation. The unedited Boston Marathon scene from Family Guy wasn't a prediction of bombing. It depicted Peter committing vehicular homicide. But the uncomfortable proximity between the joke and the actual attack illustrated the risks of making dark comedy about sensitive topics. Sometimes reality echoes fiction in ways that transform humor into horror. The Robin Williams incident represented perhaps the most haunting intersection of Family Guy and real-world tragedy, though it stemmed from coincidence rather than prediction. On August 11, 2014, beloved comedian and actor Robin Williams died by suicide at his home in California. He was 63 years old. The news devastated fans worldwide who had grown up with his performances in films like Good Will Hunting, Mrs. Doubtfire and Aladdin. That same evening, BBC Three in the United Kingdom was airing a rerun of a Family Guy episode titled Viewer Mail Number 2 Inches from Season 10. One segment of the episode, called Fatman and Robin, depicted Peter Griffin gaining the supernatural ability to turn everyone he touches into Robin Williams. The power initially delights Peter, but gradually drives him to madness. He attempts suicide multiple times, jumping off a cliff, shooting himself, but each attempt is thwarted because everything he touches transforms into Williams. The episode ended just as news of Williams's death was breaking across British media. Viewers who had just watched a cartoon character attempt suicide while surrounded by Robin Williams incarnations were immediately confronted with news of the real Williams's suicide. The timing was purely coincidental. The episode had been scheduled more than 2 weeks in advance, but the emotional impact was profound. It was scheduled more than 2 weeks ago, so it is just an uncanny coincidence, a BBC spokesperson told Yahoo UK. The network announced that the planned Friday rerun of the episode would be cancelled. Adult Swim in the United States also pulled the episode from rotation. The coincidence highlighted something important about the nature of animated predictions. Many apparent prophecies weren't predictions at all, but rather the inevitable collision of extensive content libraries with unpredictable real-world events. Family Guy had produced hundreds of episodes containing thousands of jokes about hundreds of celebrities. When one of those celebrities experienced a tragedy, some joke from the archive was almost certain to resonate in uncomfortable ways. December 14, 2017, brought news that would transform the entertainment industry. Disney had agreed to purchase the majority of 21st Century Fox's assets for $52.4 billion. The deal would give Disney control of Fox's film and television studios, its cable networks, and its stake in Hulu. It would also bring properties like the X-Men and Fantastic Four back under the same corporate umbrella as the Avengers, and it would make Disney the owner of The Simpsons. Within hours of the announcement, ESPN reporter Darren Rovell tweeted a screenshot from a 1998 episode of The Simpsons. In When You Dish Upon a Star, Homer Simpson becomes the personal assistant to actors Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, who have moved to Springfield to escape the Hollywood spotlight. Near the end of the episode, director Ron Howard is seen pitching one of Homer's screenplay ideas to 20th Century Fox, but the sign outside the studio reads something remarkable: 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Co. The joke had been written merely 20 years before Disney actually acquired Fox. The timing of the prediction to the exact corporate entities involved seemed almost supernatural. Rich Appel, who wrote the episode, offered a more mundane explanation. Even in 1998, Disney's trajectory toward media dominance was apparent. The company had recently acquired Capital Cities/ABC, demonstrating its appetite for expansion. The joke extrapolated from visible trends to imagine a future where Disney's entertainment empire had absorbed its rivals. It wasn't prophecy, it was pattern recognition, responded to the renewed attention with characteristic understatement. I predict people will make far too much of this mere coincidence. His tweet acknowledged both the humor of the situation and the tendency of fans to treat Simpsons' predictions as somehow mystical rather than statistical. To commemorate the announcement, Simpsons creator Matt Groening drew a new image depicting Homer Simpson strangling Mickey Mouse. The playful artwork acknowledged the awkward new corporate relationship while demonstrating that the Simpsons' satirical spirit remained intact even as ownership changed hands. Super Bowl LI, played on February 5, 2017, delivered one of the most dramatic games in football history. The New England Patriots overcame a 2-3 deficit to defeat the Atlanta Falcons in overtime, but for Simpsons fans, the halftime show proved equally memorable. Lady Gaga descended from the roof of Houston's NRG Stadium on cables, her silver sequined bodysuit glittering under the lights as she performed above thousands of screaming fans. The aerial performance was breathtaking, a testament to both athletic ability and showmanship, and it was instantly familiar. 5 years earlier, in 2012, The Simpsons had aired Lisa Goes Gaga, an episode featuring Lady Gaga, voiced by the singer herself, performing a concert for the citizens of Springfield. In the episode, Gaga flies through the air on cables, wearing a sparkly silver outfit and performing elaborate choreography suspended above her audience. The visual similarities to her actual Super Bowl performance were striking. Social media erupted with side-by-side comparisons. Fans noted the matching outfits, the aerial stunts, even the moment when Gaga sat at a piano for a slower number. The episode had apparently served as a blueprint for her actual halftime show, or else the show's writers had understood Gaga's performance aesthetic so thoroughly that they could predict her future choices. Fact-checkers pointed out important context. The 2012 episode wasn't predicting a Super Bowl performance, it depicted a concert. Moreover, Lady Gaga had performed similar aerial stunts before the episode aired, including a 2011 performance where she ziplined into a Good Morning America concert. The Simpsons writers had extrapolated from her existing style rather than predicting something entirely new, but the distinctions mattered less than the emotional impact. Viewers had watched a cartoon version of a celebrity performance and then, years later, watched the real celebrity execute something remarkably similar. Whether prediction or extrapolation, the effect was the same, the eerie sense that fiction had anticipated reality. In October 2011, a group of fishermen in Córdoba, Argentina, pulled something extraordinary from a reservoir near a local nuclear power plant. The fish had 3 eyes. Julian Smoot, one of the anglers, recalled the moment of discovery. "We were fishing and we got the surprise of getting this rare specimen," he told local media. "As it was dark at that time, we did not notice, but then you looked at him with a flashlight and saw that he had a 3rd eye." The fish, identified as a wolffish, immediately evoked comparisons to one of The Simpsons' most iconic recurring characters, Blinky, the 3-eyed fish. Blinky had first appeared in Season 2's 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish, which aired on November 1st, 1990. In that episode, Bart catches the mutated fish in a river downstream from the Springfield nuclear power plant. The discovery triggers a government inspection that threatens Mr. Burns' operation and becomes a central issue in his failed gubernatorial campaign. The Argentine fish wasn't orange like Blinky, and wolffish naturally inhabit different waters than Springfield's cartoon variety. But the core parallel was undeniable. A 3-eyed fish found near a nuclear facility, potentially mutated by radiation or pollution, discovered more than 2 decades after The Simpsons had imagined exactly such a creature. Environmental activists seized on the discovery as evidence of nuclear contamination, though subsequent testing was inconclusive about the mutation's cause. Scientists noted that 3-eyed fish, while extremely rare, can result from various developmental abnormalities. The Simpsons production team didn't claim prophetic abilities. The show's writers had simply followed the logical implications of nuclear waste and environmental degradation to their grotesque conclusion. Blinky was satire, a symbol of corporate negligence and its consequences. The Argentine fish was reality, echoing that satire, not because the show had predicted the future, but because the environmental concerns the show highlighted in 1990 remained relevant and unaddressed decades later. The question of why animated shows seem to predict the future so effectively has multiple answers, none of them involving actual precognition. The first and most obvious explanation is volume. The Simpsons has produced over 790 episodes, each containing dozens of jokes, background gags, and throwaway references. Family Guy has produced over 400 episodes with a similar density of content. When you generate tens of thousands of comedic scenarios over 3 decades, statistical probability guarantees that some will align with subsequent events. The second explanation involves the nature of satire itself. Good satirists don't merely mock the present, they extrapolate from current trends to absurd conclusions. When The Simpsons depicted video phones in 1995, they weren't seeing the future. They were extending visible technological trajectories. When Family Guy joked about Kevin Spacey in 2005, they may have been reflecting Hollywood gossip rather than predicting future revelations. The third explanation involves selection bias. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures who remember hits and forget misses. For every Simpsons prediction that came true, there are countless jokes that didn't correspond to any future events. Nobody compiles lists of things The Simpsons got wrong because there's no story in failed prophecy. Bill Oakley, a longtime Simpsons producer, put it plainly, "There are very few cases where The Simpsons predicted something. It's mainly just coincidence, because the episodes are so old that history repeats itself." The show's longevity means it has commented on virtually every aspect of American life, and American life has a tendency to repeat its patterns and mistakes. Yet these explanations, however accurate, don't fully capture why Simpsons and Family Guy predictions resonate so powerfully with audiences. There's something deeply satisfying about the idea that our favourite shows might contain hidden knowledge, that comedy writers in Springfield or Quahog somehow glimpsed what was coming. It transforms passive entertainment into active mystery, inviting viewers to scrutinize old episodes for clues about what might happen next. The digital age has amplified the prediction phenomenon exponentially. Before social media, a Simpsons joke that aligned with a future event might be noticed by dedicated fans but rarely achieved widespread attention. Now, any apparent prediction can go viral within hours, reaching millions of people who will search for the original episode, create meme comparisons, and debate whether the writers are time travelers, Illuminati members, or simply lucky geniuses. This viral feedback loop creates its own reality-distorting effects. When a prediction circulates widely, it becomes part of the cultural conversation, influencing how people perceive both the show and the events it supposedly predicted. The Simpsons' Trump prediction didn't just document a possibility, it arguably contributed to Trump being taken less seriously as a candidate, since his presidency had been treated as a joke 16 years earlier. Similarly, when Family Guy's Kevin Spacey joke resurfaced after the 2017 allegations, it shaped public perception of both the show and the scandal. The joke became evidence that Spacey's behavior had been an open secret, a piece of cultural archaeology revealing what Hollywood had long known but refused to acknowledge publicly. The shows themselves have become increasingly aware of their predictive reputation and occasionally lean into it. Simpsons episodes now sometimes include jokes about the show's prophecy mythology, and writers have commented extensively on the phenomenon in interviews and social media. This self-awareness doesn't reduce the power of apparent predictions. If anything, it amplifies them by encouraging viewers to watch more closely for the next one. As The Simpsons continues into its 4th decade and Family Guy persists as a cultural institution, new predictions will inevitably emerge, be debated, and either validated or forgotten. The shows have become living time capsules, repositories of American culture that document not just what happened, but what people feared, hoped for, and imagined might happen. The Trump presidency prediction remains the crown jewel of Simpsons prophecy, not because it was the most specific, but because it captured something essential about American politics. Dan Graney and his fellow writers understood that celebrity culture and political culture were converging, that the entertainment industry's values were becoming the nation's values, that someone like Trump, famous primarily for being famous, skilled primarily at self-promotion, represented a logical, if terrifying, endpoint. The Simpsons has always kind of embraced the over-the-top side of American culture, Graney reflected, and Trump is just the fulfillment of that. Whether the shows are predicting the future or simply documenting the present with uncommon clarity, They serve an important cultural function. They hold up mirrors to American society, exaggerating its features until they become impossible to ignore. Sometimes those exaggerations remain purely fictional. Sometimes reality catches up, proving that the absurd scenarios imagined by comedy writers were actually understated descriptions of where the country was heading. The story of animated predictions is ultimately a story about the power of satire to illuminate truth. The Simpsons and Family Guy don't see the future. They see the present more clearly than most of us allow ourselves to. They identify the trends we'd prefer to ignore, the consequences we'd rather not contemplate, the directions we're heading whether we admit it or not. When those satirical visions later manifest in reality, it feels like prophecy. But perhaps it's something more important than prediction. Perhaps it's a warning that we failed to heed, a joke that turned into a mirror, a cartoon that became uncomfortably real because we made it so. The writers of these shows have spent decades observing American culture, identifying its absurdities and extrapolating them to their logical conclusions. They've commented on technology, politics, celebrities, corporations, and human nature. They've made us laugh at possibilities that seemed too outlandish to consider seriously. And then, again and again, those possibilities became our reality. The next time you watch an old episode of The Simpsons or Family Guy and notice a joke that seems eerily prescient, remember that the writers weren't seeing the future. They were seeing the present you might have missed, the trends you might have dismissed, the trajectory you might have preferred not to acknowledge. The prediction phenomenon isn't evidence of time travel or conspiracy. It's evidence that good satire tells truths that straight journalism cannot, that comedy illuminates what seriousness obscures, that sometimes the clearest vision of tomorrow comes from those who mock today. Matt Selman, a Simpsons producer, offered perhaps the most insightful explanation of the show's predictive track record. Well, the sourpuss answer I always give that no one likes is that if you study history and math, it wouldn't seem that impressive. He's right, of course. If you understand patterns, probabilities, and the cyclical nature of human behavior, the predictions become less magical and more logical. But that logical explanation doesn't diminish their power. It enhances it. It suggests that anyone paying close attention to the present can glimpse the future, that prophecy isn't supernatural, but rather the result of clear-eyed observation and honest extrapolation. The Simpsons and Family Guy have been paying attention for a combined 6 decades. They've documented American culture with more thoroughness than any archive, more honesty than any history book, more humor than any analysis. They've made us laugh at ourselves, and in doing so, they've shown us who we really are. Sometimes, who we really are turns out to be exactly what they predicted. And perhaps that's the most important prediction of all. Not any specific event or technology or scandal, but the broader truth that satire reveals. We are predictable. Our culture follows patterns. Our mistakes repeat themselves. Our absurdities compound. The animated prophets of Springfield and Quahog have been telling us this for decades. We've been laughing along, enjoying the jokes, sharing the memes when predictions come true. Maybe it's time we started listening. The phenomenon continues to evolve with each passing year. In 2024, when Cypress Hill performed with the London Symphony Orchestra at Royal Albert Hall, Simpsons fans immediately recalled the 1996 episode, Homerpalooza. In that episode, the hip-hop group accidentally books the prestigious orchestra while under the influence, setting up an improbable collaboration between classical musicians and rap artists. Nearly 3 decades later, reality fulfilled the joke, with Cypress Hill performing classical arrangements of hits like Insane in the Brain, backed by the full London Symphony Orchestra. The prediction had seemed absurd when it aired, a throwaway gag about the unlikely intersection of highbrow and lowbrow culture. But the real collaboration proved that such intersections were not only possible, but commercially viable, as the concert sold out and received enthusiastic reviews. Family Guy, too, continues to generate apparent predictions that surface years after episodes air. The show's extensive commentary on celebrity culture, corporate behavior, and political dysfunction ensures that some percentage of its jokes will inevitably align with future events. The statistical nature of this phenomenon doesn't make individual instances feel less uncanny. If anything, The accumulation of predictions over time strengthens the perception that these shows possess special insight. Social media has transformed prediction hunting into a participatory sport. Dedicated fans scrutinize old episodes for potential prophecies, creating databases and comparison videos that spread rapidly when events align. This crowdsourced vigilance ensures that almost no prediction goes unnoticed, feeding the mythology while occasionally producing false positives, moments where perceived similarities are exaggerated or manufactured to fit the narrative. The Boston Marathon incident with Family Guy demonstrated the dark potential of this phenomenon. When bad actors deliberately manipulate footage to create false predictions, they exploit the public's fascination with animated prophecy to spread misinformation. The viral success of the doctored clip showed how eagerly audiences embrace apparent predictions, even when basic fact-checking would reveal manipulation. Yet the genuine predictions remain genuinely remarkable. Not as evidence of supernatural foresight, but as testament to the power of sustained cultural observation. The writers who imagined President Trump, Disney acquiring Fox, smart watches, government surveillance, and countless other future realities weren't reading crystal balls. They were reading the same newspapers, watching the same trends, and extrapolating the same patterns that anyone could observe. They just did it more systematically, more creatively, and more publicly. The Simpsons and Family Guy have become accidental archivists of American possibility. Their vast libraries of jokes and scenarios represent a comprehensive catalogue of where we might be heading, a choose-your-own adventure of cultural futures. When reality selects one of these paths, we call it a prediction. But every episode contains dozens of scenarios that didn't come true, paths not taken, possibilities that remained purely fictional. The predictions that stick are the ones that resonate. The Trump presidency, the Disney merger, the surveillance state, the celebrity scandals. They stick because they confirm suspicions we already harbored, validate concerns we couldn't articulate, and provide narrative satisfaction in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable. Perhaps the ultimate prediction is the one neither show has made explicitly, but both have demonstrated repeatedly: that American culture will continue to surprise itself, that the absurd will become normal, that the jokes of today will become the headlines of tomorrow. If history is any guide, the next great animated prediction is already buried in some episode we've forgotten, waiting for reality to catch up. The writers have done their part. They've imagined the possibilities, committed them to animation, and broadcast them to millions. The rest is up to us, and to the strange, cyclical, endlessly surprising world that keeps proving the satirists right.